Hey everyone, and welcome to the June episode of TTP at Home. And we want to give a special welcome to our 3 brand new TTP at Home groups. It's a new effort for us where we are coming into your living room and having home groups meet. So that is in, let's see, we've got Denison, Kerrville, and Florence. Welcome to True Texas Project. And we have a great lineup for you today. Let's get right to it.
We do have a great show ahead of us, Julie, but we do have some housekeeping things to take care of first. First of all, what's going on around our monthly meetings at TTP this month? We have USCCA about using force, when to use it, and the legal ramifications of that. We have Ammon Blair talking to us about how the government wants us to be eating bugs. Ew, don't think so. The movie Letter to the American Church is being shown in several locations. Tim George F. and Shelley Luther are with a couple of our locations this month, so be sure you don't miss those. I think they're the last ones. Abolish Abortion Texas is speaking to us. Condemned USA on the J6 issues. Property taxes, Texas history, and banjo music. It just doesn't get any better than that.
All right, so make sure you hit our monthly meetings, but more exciting than that, we have our 15th birthday party coming up. I can't believe we've been doing this for 15 years. They say if you do something for 5 years, you're an expert, so I think we got this covered. 15 years, we're celebrating July 12th. We're having a big party with Chad Prather. He'll entertain us with his comedy and his music and his spicy commentary. We'll be doing a group picture and a toast. You definitely want to be there for that. And then the next day on Saturday, this is all at the Fort Worth Botanical Gardens. On Saturday, we're bringing in speakers for an all-day conference. We've got 15 breakout sessions on things like Christian nationalism. Yes, we are going to talk about it, and we're not shy. We're going to talk about immigration and the border. We're going to talk about expanded gambling in Texas. We're going to prepare you for everything the legislative session has in store. So I got to tell you, though, we have limited space. We are limited to 242 people as of today, which is what, June 2nd, 3rd? I don't know. Today's June 5th. Anyway, as of today, we are 1/3 of the way sold out, and we've barely even started advertising it. So they will sell out. Make sure you go online and get your ticket. Okay?
All right, we always talk about action items because True Texas Project is all about action, and you're going to hear some throughout the podcast today. But we have a couple of specific ones for you as well. One is get out there and share our meetings and our social events on social media. I know a lot of you don't like social media, but it works for us. It's the best way to get the word out to people about what we're doing, where, what time, when. Julie and I always hear people after an event go, "Oh, I wish I would have known. Why didn't you tell me earlier after we'd spent 6 months telling you about it?" So we need you to be doing that. Share your monthly meetings, your social events, our special programs. We are also actually starting to gear up for the 2025 legislative session. I know that seems like it's a long ways away. It's 6 months, but that's going to go by fast. And there's an election in between there. So we're looking for suggestions for our legislative priorities. You can email those to me. During the summer, there are interim hearings going on, and we are trying to get citizen advocates to go and testify at those. Watch for my France Friday messages for schedules and what's happening when, and jump in when you can.
Okay, we got all the housekeeping out of the way, and you guys, I don't know if you can sense it from the camera, but we have a lot of energy in this room. So we are, we are estimating we have 20 something, give or take, mostly give, like we have maybe more than 20 state reps that we are excited about representing the grassroots in a solid way, right? You're not going to turn on us, okay? We only have 7 of them here today because getting all of you into one room is next to impossible. Your schedules are crazy. So I want to thank each of you for being here today. And before we go any further, I want you each to just introduce yourself, but just briefly. Tell us your district number, but since nobody knows what the district numbers mean, tell us, 1 or 2 big cities in your area. And then if you've been in the House already, tell us a little bit about how long you've been there in your committees. And if you are a freshman, tell us how you got here. I know every one of you has a story. We'll start here with Brian.
Great. Thanks for having me. Great to be here with you today. Brian Harrison. I'm honored to represent House District 10 in the Texas House of Representatives, a position I've held since I won a special election in late 2021. So even though I'm just wrapping up my first regular session, technically I'm about to be reelected to my third term, which feels a little bit weird because I'm one of the newer people, although not as new as all of my new friends here sitting with me today. So it's super exciting to not be the newest person anymore. I've been on the Public Education Committee, the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee, and from the second I was elected, making medical freedom putting Texas back in charge of the fight, pushing back against Joe Biden's COVID tyranny was sort of one of the issues that I've been very vocal on, and I'm excited to have so many other champions for all of the different freedoms, education freedom, medical freedom, sitting here with us today.
Fantastic. Carissa.
Hey, Julie. I'm Carissa Richardson, House District 61. So that's McKinney, Frisco, the Collin County area just north of Dallas. My first time to ever run for a race, so very excited to be here. Been politically active for my whole life, but just got really fed up with what I was seeing in Austin and decided that I need to do something about it.
So to win your very first election, that's going to be the opposite of what we hear from Shelley next, right?
Absolutely. Here you go, girl.
Hi, I'm Shelley Luther, and I am going to be the next state representative for House District 62, which is Grayson, Fannin, Franklin, and Delta counties. And as most people know, I think, my political stint started with jail almost 4 years ago, and I've run 3 times and finally beat out the incumbent, and now I'm going to represent you as a true conservative, so I'm excited.
It's wonderful. Hey, Julie, my name's Mitch Little. I'm from House District 65. That's Carrollton, Louisville, Flower Mound, Argyle, some other little towns thrown in there. I didn't have to go to jail in order to run for office. Not yet. Well,
it's
sad.
not for everybody, I'll tell you.
I understand. I was the lawyer who represented Ken Paxton in his impeachment proceeding, first successful acquittal of a statewide impeachment in history. Thank God for that. And so I'm the Republican nominee, and we'll see how this goes.
Hey guys, I'm Nate Schatzline. I represent all of North Fort Worth, Texas House District 93. I came in right after Brian. Just got done with my first session and 4 special sessions. I'm proud to have never voted for Dade Phelan, and I don't plan to. And I was proud to stand, just like Brian did, against the sham impeachment of our great Attorney General Ken Paxton. Look, we've been fighting since day one, and looking forward to potentially getting kicked out of the Republican caucus for supporting the others that are in this group. And
it's a badge of honor.
Incumbents. And so we're having fun, and we're incredibly grateful for all the people that are surrounding us right now.
Hey, my name's Andy Hopper. I'm the Republican nominee for House District 64. That's Wise and Denton County, so like Bridgeport, Decatur, Denton, city of Denton. And so anyways, me and Shelley ran together for SC30, and that's where I met all of my people. So I'm so grateful for Shelley, and honestly really grateful for people like Nate that were willing to stand up for conservatives this session that were trying to unseat rhino incumbents. But ran in 2022 for House District 64. His closest race in the state is like 88 votes on election night. So you do that. You have to do this one more time because it's difficult to unseat an incumbent. So just really glad to be over this race. Glad that we have so many conservatives that are going to stand up for Texas and conservative ideals. So,
Julie, my name's Alan Schoolcraft. I'm the Republican nominee for House District 44. That's Guadalupe County, Gonzales counties. Runs it's north and east of San Antonio, from eastern New Braunfels, Schertz, Cibolo, over to Seguin, into Gonzales, and through that county. This is actually my second time coming to the legislature. I actually served from 1981 to 93 in the House, and I was on the Public Education Committee back then. I love public education policy. It's my great desire. Hopefully I'll have enough seniority to get onto the Public Ed Committee again next time. So that's something I'm really interested in.
That's super interesting. I did not know that about you, and we're going to talk about some education issues, so we'll make sure that you may not be on the note cards for those questions, but I want to hear from you. And also thank you, because I think you traveled the furthest to be here.
It's a pleasure.
Appreciate that.
Well worth it.
Okay, so lots of changes coming to the legislature this session. Let's talk about that a bit. Out of 20 or 21 new or people that are on our side, only 4 of them are not freshmen. We have Harrison, Schatzline, Tinderholt, and Toast, right? And kind of sort of Ellen is not.
I'm kind of sort of a
You're-
lot of
you're
things,
like-
I guess.
You're like not an honorary not freshman. Okay, so anyway, Andy, how many freshmen are there on our side, and what's been the experience so far for you?
How many freshmen are on our side? What is the number? Y'all know? Jeez Louise. I mean, it's got to be 20, right? Nearly 20?
I'm not sure. You caught us off guard with that number because
Like, we were focused on our race.
I
We're
know.
just hoping all the other people made it.
He
and now
literally
we're
just
here.
won his race like 2 hours ago.
I think that's a good question after day one. How many are on our side?
Yeah, we can't say for real, which,
That's a
we'll have
great-
to answer that the first
Yeah.
week or so.
That's a great point, Nate. Well, what's it like to be in a group of so many incoming good conservative grassroots freshmen? Because I think last session there was maybe 2
Yeah.
or 3.
Well, I'll tell you what. I mean, I don't know if everyone feels this way. I really feel the weight of history on what we're doing. And, I literally got through, found our election results, and the next morning, I probably got a half a night's sleep. And then the next morning, Shelly calls up like 10 o'clock in the morning and said, Andy, pack your bags. We're going to Austin. I was like, what? And so me and Amanda and Shelly drove down to Austin, and like within 30 hours of the election, we're basically hashing out the language of the, pledge to basically support Republican committee chairmanships. And to me, the fact that there's such a movement and so much impetus to change the way things are in the Texas House, because we realize the time is critical and the time to save Texas is now. I mean, I think it's historic. And so that's what it feels like to me. I just feel like that we have this opportunity, like, Lord help us, like, we cannot blow this. This is the time.
Yes.
I think I agree with the whole historic aspect. I've been watching the legislature since 2013 closely, and this is the most excited I've ever been. So, Brian, since you're the one with the most experience here in this group, what's
Actually, I think Alan technically has that.
no, he's just honorary.
That's right.
Officially, it's you. So, what do you think are the challenges that these new representatives are going to face?
That list is really long. I would say that the most important challenge I think anybody faces when they get into any kind of government office, and that can be a local city thing all the way up to a senior federal position, is to resist the temptation to sort of take the comforts of the moment, to say, I would rather make decisions that will make me popular amongst my new peers in the trappings of power, okay, that will make me liked by the quote-unquote leadership structure, that will make me popular in the media, that will get me glowing press coverage, as opposed to remembering the things I promised my voters when I ran for office. Because, I mean, everybody has to make a choice. In 2024, going into the 2025 session, there's no longer a moment where silence is acceptable. At this point, given how rapidly the left is pursuing their goals of the radicalization, the socialist takeover of our country, silence is no longer an option. In fact, silence is complicity at this point. You've got to have the courage to stand up and push back. And what I tell so many new people is, if you will just vote and speak the way you promised all of your voters, Texas wouldn't be in the state that it's in. The United States wouldn't be in the state that it's in. And if you care now about the opinions of people whose names you didn't know 6 months ago, you might have your priorities just a little bit backwards. You work for the people that sent you there, not for anybody under that pink dome in Austin.
I love that so much. Julie and I are always saying that all it takes to get reelected subsequently to your first is do what you said you were going to do. It's such a simple thing, folks. So we're counting on y'all.
Okay, so we have a lot of listeners that some of them are very new to this. Most of them have no idea who you are unless you're like from their district. And we keep talking about there's like 20 something of you. Okay, so I want to list the ones that aren't here today. We invited all of them. It's just impossible to get everybody here. But I don't know them very well myself. Okay, we interviewed them, most of them, but then you're relying on my memory, which is terrible. So I want to read them, and if you could pass the mic around and interject, tell us who these people are. Okay. Great. So some of them I know, and I can just kind of fill in. It's just a sentence or two. Okay. So obviously we have Tony Tinderholt out of Arlington. He's been there. Gosh, he's been there one of the longest, right? How much longer than you, Nate?
Probably 10 years.
Yeah. Oh, 10 years. So quite a bit. Yeah. Okay. So we've got Tony. He's solid. He's with us, right, out of Arlington. Mike Alcott actually partnered with us for at least 10 years through True Texas Project. Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
And try not to joke around too much.
No. In fact, so Mike is one of my best friends. He actually is the guy that runs Parker County Conservatives, and that's been our sister group for a number of years. We started Wise County Conservatives, and he basically put his arm around us and got us to the point where, we were functional and making a difference. And so Mike is an activist. He's a patriot. And the idea that Mike and Shelley Luther and Mitch Little and all these folks, West Verdell, are going to Austin at the same time, and honestly, I think we're all going to just have to basically just kind of suck it up when we go down on the floor, because the thing about it is there's so many people who have so much to add, that I think that, and they all have their own little skill sets. And Mike's skill set is to basically be, an encouraging, very positive personality. And I think that's more than I mean, we pick on Mike a lot, and he's not here, so I'll say nice things around
even
him
more.
because he's not here.
That's great.
He also block walked for me for the SD30 race. And I mean, he has been boots on the ground. He has been stirring
for
stuff
like
up
12 years,
for
10,
a
12
long
years.
time, and finally just said, you know what, I built all this up. Why don't I just run? And so for people that he's worked for, now getting to go into the Texas House with him, it's definitely an honor. I'm
giddy.
awesome.
I mean, I'm giddy to have all you people going. That's amazing. So the next one I want to mention, actually, I think we all know his mom better than we know him, and that's Brent Money. Anybody have a relationship with him?
I'll add in. So Brent was an interesting one because, number one, he's filling a seat that has been held by a conservative, and it was vitally important that we got someone in that was going to fight for those conservative values. He's going to be, until this next session, my desk mate. Oh. And so it was an easy endorsement for me. I was looking and I was like, we have someone from the establishment, Austin Swamp, and then we have someone who's vowed to fight for the people and only for the people. Brent was a resilient warrior during his fight because he went into a race where Democrats got his opponent over the line in the special election, and he said, oh, no, we're going to battle again. And then you challenged her for the primary, really making his opponent the shortest tenure in Texas House history I've ever seen.
Yeah,
as quickly as that name went on the door, it's coming off. And I'm really excited to serve with him. I think he's a conservative warrior, and I think the entire, just much like everyone here, the entire Austin establishment went so hard against him that the people who got him there was not the Austin establishment, so he owes them nothing.
Yes.
And he's going to go in and remember who got him there.
Yeah,
so
that's perfect.
Lawyer, businessman, title
Yeah.
company owner, very sophisticated.
Out of what town?
Learned guy. Same. His kids and my kids are about the same
Green?
age.
Greenville.
Yeah.
Greenville. Okay.
area. Yeah.
Okay. I want to go through these a little bit faster, though, because there's a lot. Wes Verdell comes from Gun Owners of America, right? Okay.
Wes
You take
Verdell.
that, Mitch.
Love West Verdell. West Verdell is like something out of a book, really. He has like 10 associate's degrees. He's a diesel mechanic. Wow. He's the Texas director of Gun Owners of America, but very well read, very smart, very learned, and definitely not new to the Austin scene because he's been lobbying on behalf of 2A efforts there for a very long time. His wife doesn't like the shirts that he wears, but
No, it's funny. It's funny.
somebody gave him a bunch of new shirts, and he's going to look very spiffy when he comes to Austin.
We're going to watch for that.
Don't worry, Sarah.
You ever just meet somebody you instantly know you're going to be friends?
Yes.
That's Wes Verdell. He's going
I
to
have
be
a room full of
warrior.
them right here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, good. Okay, how about Matt Morgan? I don't
He's
know
great, and I don't know a lot personally about him, but he's definitely on our side, 100% on our side.
Where does he come from?
Yeah, Matt is from the Katy area west of Houston. He defeated J.C. Jeton over the governor's endorsement, over a fortune from almost as big a fortune as I had to overcome from Texas for lawsuit reform. Matt is a public insurance adjuster and a wonderful family man, conservative warrior. He's going to do a very, very nice job, and he overcame a lot of really tough endorsements too.
Fantastic.
And he keeps telling everybody he wants me to be his desk mate because I'm the meanest one.
Everyone wants you to be their desk mate.
I'm like,
Where's Tim? Is he in here?
no, Tim is saying yes. You're right.
Okay, how about Gary Gates?
Brian and I have history with Gary. I'm looking forward to serving with him once again. Gary's been really a fighter in helping get some of these guys elected, whether it's, donating against incumbents, which was huge, which I think it takes a lot. It takes a lot to get out there and put your name on the line and say, okay, we're going to war with all of my classmates, which I think just shows the character that we have to have greater character when it comes to, the incumbent protection program and actually fighting for conservatives.
So Gary's an incumbent?
Gary is an incumbent.
I didn't even realize that.
Yes.
Okay, so we've kind of won him over then.
Yeah.
Oh, nice. You heard it here first. Okay, good. How about Janice Holt? See, some of these
She's
I just
awesome.
don't
She's
know.
a former public educator.
Okay.
She's also the school board president currently right now, and she is a huge advocate for school choice.
Okay.
And so she is going to be phenomenal. She is quick. And she is not afraid at all, not even a little bit. I love her. I really had a good connection with her from the first moment I met her. She's awesome. She's very tough. She's
Okay.
great.
Helen Kerwin, who actually was going to be here today and then had to cancel at the last minute.
Yeah, super excited to get Helen Kerwin into the Texas House. I've had the privilege and honor of campaigning with her all over her district. Her little small world trivia: her mother, or her daughter, and I got to be very good friends because we were both colleagues together working in the White House for President Donald J. Trump. So I got to know Helen actually through her mother, and then so we've been campaigning all over together. She is going to be just a real principled conservative member of the Texas House, and I couldn't be more excited to serve with Helen.
Nice. I like hearing that. Excuse me. Don McLaughlin?
Go ahead.
Don't have
He's
to
the
fight
mayor.
over him.
He's the mayor of Uvalde. He's in a very tight district. He's
way
signed
down there.
Yeah, he's
Okay.
signed the contract with Texas. He is a conservative stalwart. He's been with us every step of the way, and has been really a good friend. He's one of these people that you get to meet for the first time. You have no other reason to meet him other than conservatives are piling their efforts together, and I like him a lot.
District. Yeah, he's in a swing district right now. He's replacing Tracy King, that's a Democrat, and so he's actually going to be coming in. And it just goes to show, and I think this is really important, that you do not, when you're in a tight district, need to compromise your conservative values in order to win over Democrats. Go in and be strong for the Republicans that want you to represent them.
That's awesome. And now I understand why he's not here.
Yeah.
He's from Uvalde. Okay. Katrina Pearson. Obviously, Katrina, we go way back because she's helped us found the Tea Party in 2009. So she's coming in from Rockwall County. Caroline Fairley.
She's young.
Yep.
Yeah. I actually don't know a lot about her except for she's 25, I think, years old, and she youngest, but she
Like
also
ever?
She looks. She, just like your daughter, she looks like she's about 17, and she jokes about that, but she has to be she must be very good at what she does, and we haven't got to know her like really well yet, but from what we've seen, she's going to be on the right side.
Fantastic.
She also brings a healthcare policy background, which is something that's lacking in Republican member. Healthcare policy is something that scares a lot of Republicans. Unfortunately, the Democrats have owned that issue. So from my first meetings with her, we've had lots of good discussions. She comes into the legislature with some real knowledge in the healthcare policy space that's been lacking. So
she's worked on Capitol Hill. She's had a lot of experience for being so
at
young.
25.
Yep, she's definitely a solid conservative, but she's from the Amarillo area. She's replacing for Price, and so
That's what you were saying, Ronnie Jackson. I was like, what is he telling me? Yeah.
yes,
he's
ma'am.
great.
We got a
So,
significant upgrade, no doubt.
Nice. Okay. Only two more. Mark LaHood.
Yeah, Mark actually represents the district I used to represent. He's in Bexar County, northeastern San Antonio area. He had a really, really tough primary race against Steve Allison, and significant upgrade, in my opinion. I don't know him a lot personally. I've just watched from a distance. He and his brother both have run for district attorney and so forth, and he finally got elected here. He's an attorney. He's very sharp, very smart, and just looking forward to working with him.
Nice. And the last one then would be AJ Louderback.
Oh yeah. So AJ Louderback looks like a sheriff walked right out of Central Casting onto a Hollywood set, and he's been the sheriff of Victoria County. Their family lives in Victoria. He had a very tough primary against Jeff Bachnight and came out on the right side. AJ has worked with Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick on border issues and Trump on border issues, and he's about as much of an expert in law enforcement as you can be in anything. So, brilliantly talented guy and politician. I think he'll be a very fine addition.
Okay, so that's the list, that my official list. There could be, give or take, but I think we might find that some of the people watching, listening, are surprised. Like, I thought I had a great state rep. Why are they not on this list, right? So I want to actually ask Nate, if people are surprised to not have their state rep on this list, or their potential state rep, because we haven't actually voted, but what happens next? First, should they be surprised? Are these state reps going to be shunned? Is there a chance for them to be welcomed in? Like, do we need to compromise? Or do they need to step it up, right?
I try to smile as much as I can because everyone says that I'm mean when I don't. So I'll smile while saying this. The Texas Legislature has a lot of people that mean well but are cowards. And I just shoot straight with it. We don't need any more good men. We need strong, bold, and courageous men and women that are going to stand in the gap and actually do what they were sent down there to do. If your state rep is not on whatever list, the solution is simple. It's call them, reach out to them, gather a group, ask them why, have a conversation with them, and then when you realize, wait a second, this state legislator is not doing what I've asked them to do, raise someone up to run against them. And I can assure you that if you raise someone up that is the right person, there's going to be an army around them in the legislature that's willing to break the incumbent protection program and go after some allies that are going to stand with us. Look, the day of us accepting status quo legislators that are just pro-life Republicans, that's the bare minimum, right? It's not enough to just say I'm a pro-life Republican anymore.
Bare minimum, I like that.
The bare minimum. At the end of the day, of course you're pro-life. What Republican isn't pro-life? But then we look at it and we say, great, where are you when it comes to the sexualization of children? Where are you when it comes to bucking up against the Austin establishment? Where are you when it comes to your priorities when you get into Austin? Do you care more about getting your name on a bill, or do you care more about pushing the needle to the right? Because those two things oftentimes are not synonymous, and you can't do both in the same session. And so you have to ask yourself, when you're getting someone elected, and these are the right people right here, what are you more committed to? Are you more committed to raising your stock in the Austin swamp? Or are you more committing to making sure that those GOP priorities get across the finish line, whether your name's on them or not? And so I would just encourage anyone whose rep is not represented on this list to simply take inventory, watch them closely this session, and hold them accountable to the decisions that they make.
That's beautiful. So am I correct then in saying that among the 7 of you here, the idea of compromise is not really on the table? Like, oh, you're a nice guy, and most of the time you're with us, we're going to just bring you in? Or
Sure, I'll answer that, and then I'll pass it off to some of these guys. I know Brian's here. Look, we'll take anyone in. It's at any given point when people choose to do the right thing, you're welcome into the family. The idea is we need to see people drop their pride and recognize and turn and say, hey, look, I haven't been representing the grassroots. I'm ready to start now. Fantastic. We will celebrate you as a conservative when you do. And so the door is open, but let's be clear. We are just as easily willing to push away and say, hey, you are not representing who we're supposed to be representing right now. So absolutely, it's an open door. Brian, I think you could speak to that as well.
Yeah, happy to add to that. Look, I will work with absolutely anybody in the pursuit of the maximization of liberty and in the reduction in the scope of government. And look, we're all proud Texans here. We're honored to be in the Texas House, or soon to be in the Texas House, but we need to have our eyes wide open with what we're dealing with at this point in time, where we are at this juncture in history. And look, Texas has a well-earned reputation for leading the nation in the defense of liberty and in freedom, but the problem is, the reality is that for far too long, elected Republicans have been too content just to coast on that reputation as opposed to living up to it and to defending it. Look, I'll be very clear about something that some people think is controversial, but that's okay. The real problem in America, and the real problem even in Texas these days, is not the Democrats. We know who the Democrats are. The Democrats know who the Democrats are. They know that the future is on the line, and they act like it every day. The real problem in this country are weak Republicans who are too cowardly to stand up against the leftist objectives that if unchecked, will force my kids, your kids, grandkids, to inherit a state where freedom does not prevail, where due process doesn't exist, where political opposition is silenced, or in this case, what we're seeing what happened with President Trump, what they tried to do with Attorney General Paxton, criminalized. That I won't tolerate. But I will work with, and I think I can say this for everybody up here, I will work with anybody, not just any Republican. I would even work with Democrats if there's an opportunity to pursue liberty. You can be bipartisan in the pursuit of freedom. I've joined authored bills with some of the most liberal members of the Democrat Party because I saw an opportunity to further protect liberty. So we want to work with everybody who shares those goals: limited government, personal freedom, individual liberty, governments that are constrained in their power by the limits placed on them by our state and our federal constitutions.
Okay, thank you. So I had another question that I think we've already addressed. So I'm going to skip that and call an audible. When we were first introducing ourselves, somebody over here joked about the Republican caucus and being kicked out. Let's talk about what these caucuses are. Like, remember, we need to speak in layman's terms.
Yeah.
They don't know your terminology. They don't know the clubs. So address that. Somebody address
I'll try
that.
to go quick. Do you want someone else to go through?
No, you do it.
Okay, so the Republican caucus has been nothing more than an incumbent protection program. Is that safe to say, Brian?
Safe to say.
And, you know, ultimately, probably at its origins, the Republican caucus was the group of Republicans that come together, and they had a goal of working together on the House floor, or camaraderie, and building relationships, and making sure that we were fighting for, originally, probably in its origin, fighting for the GOP priorities when they came to the floor, and fighting for Republican values. What it's turned into is everybody pay your $2,000 every year so that we can use that money to keep liberal Republican incumbents in power every year. And here's what we do. We meet 3 times a year at most, and then everyone goes and has a golf tournament, or you go to a spa day. There are actual men in the Republican caucus that have spa days. This is public. And
No judgment.
that's true. I didn't want to out Brian. So yeah. So in the Republican caucus, there has been rules that were formed before our time that say you cannot endorse against an incumbent. And the idea is, hey guys, we're against Democrats and Democrats alone, but as Brian just articulated so well, is that the greatest enemy that we have right now is not just the Democrats, because at least they're honest about who they are. It is the Republicans that don't stand for true Republican values. And so we broke that rule, or rather, we really just honored our constituents and honored Texans by going out and saying, hey, Shelley Luther needs to be in the legislature. Hey, Andy Hopper needs to be in the legislature. And we fought and fought and fought. And so now we've been notified that there will be an official vote to kick us out of the Republican caucus, which is fun, right? Because at the end of the day, I can't think of one good thing the Republican caucus has done for us. And so for us, really what we're really excited about.
Do you get a refund? Do you get a refund?
You know, I think they've... I doubt we get a refund. I don't know that I would want that money anyway. And so, but at the end of the day, we're way more focused on fighting for our conservative values than we are any good old boys club that we could be a part of.
And I'll say real quick that we were formally notified, I think 3 or 4 nights ago, they had begun the process of punishing us with the potential of kicking us out of the caucus, which means the Republican caucus and the GOP-dominated Texas House of Representatives is going to punish me and Nate Schatzline and Tony Tinderholt more aggressively than we ever punished the Democrats when they broke quorum. That's going to happen.
Don't you need like a 2/3 vote to kick you guys out of the
we'll
caucus?
See. They've told us they've started the process. But you know what? Here's the reality, and I'll say this in one sentence. There's just too much on the line in the future of our country and our state than for people like me and Nate to care what a handful of elected Republicans in Austin think. I was proud to travel the state campaigning with these men and women in their districts to give my kids a shot at a more free and a more prosperous Texas. Let me tell you what, I would do it again, and I'll do it next session too.
That's right, Brian. Tell them what you told them about gathering evidence.
Oh, yeah. They said they're going to begin an investigation to see if there's enough evidence to convict me for whether I broke the caucus bylaws. I said, I will provide you all the evidence you need to document my guilt. I am guilty. I campaigned for these men and women, and I am so excited that I did.
You know, Julie, I think you need to remember what these gentlemen decided to do was not easy. They stepped out of safety to come and help people like me when, like, literally the Saturday or Sunday night before Election Day in the primary season. So they could have been at home with their kids going, let's go get an extra spa treatment wherever the next caucus meeting is. But instead, yeah, Nate, how was that massage, Nate? It was nice, wasn't it? So instead of doing that, they stepped out of safety to help people like Shelley and me and everybody sitting here.
I know it looks like all fun and games now because you won and we're laughing, but you're right. That was a big deal.
But it's also, you talk about keep an eye on your representatives. So there will be probably a list of people that we might know that is going to vote for you to be out of the caucus. I don't know if it's secret or not, but we can guess who it is. You watch your representative to see what they do when it comes to this, because are we fighting Democrats or Republicans, and not just Republicans, the 3 or 4 most conservative Republicans in the whole House.
And you said, real quick, I got to pick up on that super fast. You said it was a risk because we didn't know who was going to be, the winner. Looking back now, it's easy to see, okay, well, maybe that's why they did it, because these guys were coming in. On paper, I'm looking around the room at you, every one of you on paper not just should have lost, you should have lost badly. You were massively outspent by every liberal special interest in Texas.
Yeah.
The voters are more powerful, though.
That's right.
That's right. Yeah.
So how does this differ from the Freedom Caucus? Or am I not allowed to ask
Are we
that question?
going? Oh, we can go there. That's great.
Let's go there.
I'm being nice. No. So me and Brian, we left the Freedom Caucus, and the reality was, and I don't want to speak for Brian. The reason that I left was simply because I felt like we could fight more. We could fight greater if we had very independent. And as we walked out, there were some issues that I felt we needed to fight harder on. For example, the sham impeachment of Ken Paxton. That wasn't something that the Freedom Caucus led on. That's something that we wanted to lead on. And so for us, it's nothing against those guys. In fact, I look forward to working with those guys. These guys have committed to not vote, for anyone who's going to empower Democrats and committee chairs. I think we as a group are on a great trajectory right now. But I think rather than even looking at groups, what I see is, it's what Milton Friedman says, create an environment to where even the wrong person has to do the right thing. And that has to be our focus, and really pulling everyone onto the ship that's like, all right, I see Dade Phelan's ship is sinking over there. It's time to jump on board with who we think is going to actually push us towards our GOP priorities. Mitch?
No.
Okay.
Okay, let's get to the elephant in the room. We are hoping to have a new Speaker of the House in 2025. It looks like there's going to break out to be about 86, 87 Republicans, assuming all you guys win in November. But we need 76 votes to get a speaker. So let's start with you, Brian. Who do you think we absolutely need to target the most? Who are the ones that are on the fence and can be swayed? Because True Texas Project has a pretty good grassroots army going, and we can start making phone calls.
Look, without getting into particular names, let me say what I think is most important. And actually, let's just put the facts on the table. Dade Phelan is in a strong position to remain the speaker because Dade Phelan has empowered Democrats and he has prioritized their bills and their policies on the floor of the House. That's why Democrats went down to Beaumont to save him. Okay, and quite frankly, Dade Phelan should be humiliated. He should be embarrassed. He spent over $13 million to eke out an election by less than 400 votes, and he needed liberal Democrats to drag him across the finish line. But it shouldn't be surprising that Democrats will save his seat in Beaumont because he empowers them in Austin. And so what that means, though, is he goes into the speaker's race with a block of votes of probably 66 votes just at the beginning. That means he only needs about 11 or 12 Republicans to defect and to go and vote with him and the Democrats. So the real question is going to be, as we head into next session, how many elected Republicans are willing to continue publicly betraying the voters that sent them to office? Because everyone campaigns, says, vote for me, I'll stand up to radical Democrats, but then too many of them vote to put those radical Democrats in power, collude with them to destroy liberty, collude with them, in this case, to potentially reelect Speaker Phelan. So what's super important to me, and I know to a lot of these other future and current members, is not just who the speaker is. Honestly, I would love for us, my ultimate goal is to get back to the state of Texas, back to it the way it was for most of our history, where nobody knew who the speaker was and nobody cared. It was supposed to be a servant role. It didn't really have any extra power. The body governed itself. And that's why it's so important, why we put out the contract with Texas. I think everybody here has signed it. What is of primal and utmost importance to us is to make structural changes into the House, because under Dade Phelan and liberal speakers before him, it has become a corrupt den of liberal dysfunction, and we've got to transform it into a body that lets members faithfully represent the voters that sent them there and make the body one that is more responsive to the will of the Texas voters. We've got to reform the Texas House. Then we can focus on the speaker. Then we can focus on the Republican priorities. I think it's in that order.
Okay, amen to that. Carissa, we haven't heard from you much yet.
Okay, I'm ready.
My question for you is: you defeated a first-term incumbent by a pretty big margin. So
68 to 32.
yeah, awesome.
Yes.
And you have signed the contract for Texas that we've talked about. Can you talk to us a little bit about the 12 principles that are in there? Besides the speaker and the no Democrat chairs, that's kind of a given. But tell us why you signed on to that. What principles are important to you?
Oh, wow. They're all important. I mean, I think the hardest one to swallow is going to be recording of meetings. I think that's going to be that one's going to be tough. But we've had too many backroom deals. I mean, you know, I want transparency. You know,
So I just want to remind everybody that our listeners don't know what you're talking about. Record what? What meetings? What are we, like be a little more detailed.
And then you can keep going. Really what we're asking for is that many times when you hear that a bill is killed, take SB 14, for example, the ban on gender modification for minors, or mutilation, we should say. That bill was killed 3 times before it actually got passed on the floor. It was killed because of what's called a point of order, where a Democrat goes to the back mic, calls a point of order, then it goes to our parliamentarian, and our parliamentarian is a hired gun. Now, our current parliamentarian is a Obama White House lawyer that was appointed by our speaker, Dade Phelan, and that person is not supposed to call balls and strikes. They're supposed to give a suggestion to the speaker, but our current parliamentarian has been allowed to call balls and strikes, and so he killed the Border Protection Unit bill that we had, HB 20, and Dade Phelan upheld the ruling that was allowed to be upheld. And so what she's speaking to when we talk about the recordings is, for far too long, the front mic activity has been recorded. When you hear a bill being laid out, you can hear it. When you hear someone calling a point of order, you can hear it. But that point of order debate between the parliamentarian and the person defending it is off the mic and a backroom deal that's occurring.
You'll see people gathered around the speaker's dais having those little conversations, and we can't hear what they're saying.
So I was just going to say that the gentleman I defeated was a lobbyist for 10 years, and he wasn't a representative, and he wasn't transparent. He would vote with the Democrats, and then we'd go change his vote. And so 61 times he did that, and to me, that's a lot. So I want to be transparent, and I want the House to be transparent. And I think the parliamentarian abuse is a very big part of this, but I think to what Brian mentioned earlier, 2 terms for a speaker, I think there should be limitations, because they build up this big jackpot of money from special interest groups, and they dole it out to buy those votes. And what I saw as an average citizen was just abuse of power. And for my children, my grandchildren, the future of Texas, I want to see transparency. I want to see truth. I want to see true representation. And I just wasn't seeing that. And so I joined this group to make a difference. And that's what I intend to do.
Yeah, and that's all any of us want. We want truth. We want transparency. We want honesty. So
yeah, hold me accountable. You elected me, hold me accountable. If I do something wrong, let me know it, right?
We're good at that,
and if I do something, I know you are, but I'm just talking about the average constituent. They don't know what's going on, and we have uninformed voters, and they don't see truth. And so we need to bring truth to light, and that's been my prayer. I want to see truth come to light, and I think that that's very freeing. So
that's great. Thank you. Alan, how do you think our citizen advocates can best support the effort to get the contract with Texas principles implemented in the House?
Well, obviously, from paying attention to what their representative is doing, we need, as a representative, as a campaigner, as a candidate, I need to help spread the word about organizations like this one and others that spread the news as far as what the legislators are doing or not doing. So the voters. Well, they don't have to be watching me, because I'm here and I'm on top of it. I'll be with it. But the neighboring counties, other places, go ahead and ask your representative what they're intending to do. Are they going to be part of this reform effort, or are they going to be trying to keep the status quo? And hopefully they'll come around to being reformers with us.
In our citizen advocate message we sent out on Friday, one of the things we asked people to do was to go to the website and sign the contract for Texas, and then find out if your representative has signed it, and if not, beat them up a little bit.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say next.
Did anybody want to add to anything about the contract for Texas before we move on?
Yeah, I was just going to point out that if you look at the history of the speaker over, 1836 to basically, I think the mid 1970s, I think there was only one speaker who served more than one term.
Yeah,
And then you see it now, like they expect to be in there internally. And, it's like, there's something that's changed, and it's the centralization of power of the speaker that we're trying to disarm. The only way that they are able to pull this stuff off is to do things in secret and to then gaslight you when they come back to district. They'll say, oh, the House can't even vote to impeach Ken Paxton. That's the things we hear, and, oh, no, I mean, we did conspire with Democrats, you know what I mean? And that's what we're trying to achieve. We're trying to get this out in the open so that if they pull any shenanigans, that it has to be done completely transparently and open. And I think when you do that, like what Nate said, trying to get the wrong people to do the right thing, those 11 or 12 or whatever members that are going to basically be traitors to our movement, traitors to our party, that it's going to be completely clear and upfront exactly who those people were. And I think they're going to be disinclined to do that if we do what we're doing.
Can I add to that? Yeah. I just want to talk about the speaker for a minute. The battle for the speakership in Texas is the most significant thing going right now. So everyone who belongs to True Texas Project participates in it. Talk to your representative about who they're going to vote for speaker.
Well, back up even from there, because half of our people think they get to vote. They were shocked Dade Phelan and David Covey were not on their ballot.
Yeah, it's because it's something, the speakership is something that is in the public awareness or public consciousness, but they don't understand really how we get there. The Speaker of the Texas House isn't the person who, is the best looking, is the smartest, is the best with media, most knowledgeable about policy. It's literally just the person who has the right number of votes. And in recent memory, the speakership has been a product of this Faustian bargain between liberal Republicans and Democrats in the Texas House to get to the numbers. It's just a number. So I think typically people who are sitting at home listening to your podcast are going, this is supposed to be the leader of the Texas House, right? It's the person who's supposed to be leading the Republican Party efforts in the Texas House. That's not what it is. I think the speaker spent almost $1 million in Carissa Richardson's race for Frederick Frazier.
One race.
Yeah, and so contemplate this. Speaker spent $13 million, almost $1,000 a vote, trying to retain power in the Texas House. Did the speaker come and hold a sign and block walk for Fred Frazier? How about Reggie Smith? How about Lynn Stuckey or John Kemple? No. This is the classic example of the captain who's going to say, hey, last lifeboat, this is my spot. Hey, I'm sorry that you guys are going to have to sacrifice your role in the Texas House, but that's a price I'm willing to pay. Yeah. And so, unfortunately, we don't have leadership in the Texas House. We simply have a person who has the right number of votes. Leadership, I think everybody who's run a business or been part of a team knows that leadership is about self-sacrifice, about ensuring that others do better than yourself. And somehow that power pyramid has been turned on its head in the Texas House, and we need to fix it now.
Can I add to that? Mitch said something that just kind of triggered maybe something the voters don't know. Is so well said, Mitch. But the way that a speaker becomes speaker is obviously you get 76 votes. However, it's important to note that our current Republican process is not we go to the floor first. It's actually we meet in caucus in December. So all of these new future incumbents are going to come in, these new representatives, and we're going to vote for that speaker. And what it takes is 2/3 of the Republicans in caucus to vote for the Republican-nominated speaker to go to the floor and then take a vote. And so ultimately, historically, Dade Phelan has gathered all his Democrat support, declared, I have a victory, and then we go through shenanigans inside the Republican caucus, and it really means nothing. But we are demanding that we actually hold people accountable in this speaker process this time around, and that's why it's so significant that we look at it and say, okay, well, it takes 35 people to block a speaker, because if you don't have 35 of them, then guess what? You're not becoming speaker. Well, we came out and just a few days ago and just said, hey, look, if you're not going to ban Democrat chairs and you're not going to only solicit support from Republicans, then we're not going to vote for you. And guess how many, Republicans in the Republican caucus said yes? 46 so far.
Yeah.
And we're believing for more. And I think that's significant because we're seeing this, and it's not just Dade Phelan. It's his entire group as well. We have to look, who are the closest people to Dade Phelan? They also cannot be speaker because we don't want Dade Phelan 2.0 with a new face. We know who right now. The grassroots know who Dade Phelan is. Don't give them another session with a new face to go after the same agenda. And so it's important to know the process, to know that we can hold your representative accountable by How did they vote in caucus? We should be demanding transparency on that. Who are they supporting as we get closer? And really, who are they not supporting, which is the more important thing?
I think Alan also was about to say something.
Yeah, obviously the speakership race is a big thing right now. It's huge, and it has a lot to do with how the House runs. So if people really get interested in this, since we're talking about it so much, there's a great book put out by Kent Grusendorf called Who Rules the Texas House? It's an easy read, and it's a great history on the speakership and how in 1981 is how when the change started happening from having servant leadership as a speaker to an imperial speakership, which is what we have now. It's a fascinating book, and it helps you really understand why we are so passionate about wanting to reform how the House runs.
Shelley.
Well, what I was going to say is your representative, if they're not on board with this document that we've all signed, and it comes down to it, and we're voting for the speaker on the floor, there's going to be a record vote of that. You will have a list of all the people that ended up voting for Phelan instead of coming to our side and siding with Democrats. And that's when you're done with trying to make the wrong person do the right thing. You just vote them out. They must go. So if they side with Phelan and the Democrats and those traitors put Phelan back in as speaker, they don't get another chance. And I will go to every district to make sure that all of those incumbents are voted out.
I want to add one last thing. I know I'm talking a lot, and I'll stop, but I think it's really important. Mitch said this is the first battle that we have. But I want to be clear. No matter who becomes speaker, whether that's Dade Phelan or anyone else, we're fighting the same. So when we get in there, a new face doesn't mean less of a fight. It means we're holding them just as accountable. Look, we grew government in a way that we've never grown government in the history of the state of Texas this last session. We're going to have a budget fight. We are going to the floor for limited government. We are fighting to cut spending. That is the only way we're going to lead into a path that actually leads to the elimination of property taxes. And so we're going to fight for the rules. Rules changes are huge. How these parliamentary procedures, they're going to have to be changed by the rules. And so ultimately, number one is the speaker battle, but reforming the Texas House, that's just the start. We're just getting started.
So actually, none of you have said anything about Oliverson or Slauson. Does anybody want to?
It doesn't even matter at this
running.
point. It doesn't even matter which one it is right now, because we've got to get enough people that can get together like we signed on this document and says, all we know is it's not Phelan and we're not doing Democrat chairs, and we got a lot of people to agree with that. Now, that will be a fight on the floor later, but right now it's never Phelan. That's it. Never Phelan.
And I would add, bringing transparency to the speaker selection process that has never happened before in the history of our state. Because the more people, so I want to say thank you to what you're doing, educating voters across the state of Texas, because the more people that understand, hey, we have a massive problem in the Texas House, we've got mostly Republicans, but the Democrats control it, and here's how. This is why we have a need for structural reforms like we laid out in the contract for Texas, because if we can get the reforms in the contract accepted by the speaker candidates, then honestly, the state of Texas is going to be on a much better path regardless of who the speaker ends up being. So we're focusing on the reforms first, and the names, well, we got 7 months for that.
I think that's great, because we're always giving action items and everybody's asking us, who should we support? How do we make this happen? You know, so really we're getting the cart before the horse. We need to get the reforms, get the commitments to not support Dade, and then go for that.
For anybody who's looking at these potential speaker candidates, reach out, call them, email them, ask them on the phone. Do you support the contract with Texas? Ask them all that question.
Yeah, good. Okay, so we're going to move on now to priorities, legislative priorities. We know that the GOP convention was just, I don't know, a week or two. It all flies. So it was recently. And there were 15 that were put forward. We all had to vote it down to 8. They have not released those 8 yet. They may have by the time the podcast comes out. I don't know. But they were all good. I think we could all basically agree, wow, let's just do all of these, right? But I want to talk about some specifically. And we're going to talk about something that True Texas Project traditionally does not approach, and that is school choice. So for years, we were all against school choice because we didn't want the government getting their hands into what already works very well, right? I homeschool my daughter. Abbott and the government has had their hands out of it, and my daughter is amazing, right? I don't want to change that. I don't want your money. I just want to do my own homeschooling my own way, okay? And then all of a sudden, we've got all these state reps that are saying, no, school choice, school choice, school choice. And I'm like, what? Where did that come from? And then Abbott, of course, has supported a lot of you. I'm not sure specifically who, specifically because you're supporting school choice. And then we saw in the legislature last session, all of the school choice bills were crap, right? You actually addressed just a couple of the issues real quick.
Well, in my opinion, they were crap because it seems like we're looking at a failed government program and creating a new government likely failing program instead of fixing the original one. And I don't think it's fixable anymore, but both of those bills just threw money at the school choice issue, thinking they're going to satisfy parents who want money to go to private schools, as well as satisfy the educrats who want more money for teachers and more money per student. And it's just more money, more money, more money. And I'm old, I've watched us throw money at the education system for over 50 years now, and it has gotten us nowhere. So somebody needs to come up with a better plan than just throwing money at it.
Let me just apologize. Fran is here saying, I'm old, and I'm just nodding with her. Sorry. So that's not what I was agreeing with. But I do agree that the school choice issue is sticky. And I want to hear, Shelley, I know you have an education background. Alan, you apparently have one. Let's hear your thoughts, because we'll go against you if we have to. But I don't think we're going to have to. I just want to hear your thoughts.
This is one of my pet peeves. I was 35 years ago, I was homeschooling when homeschooling wasn't cool.
Wow, yeah.
And so when we were afraid to let our kids out of the house because we thought somebody's truant officer was going to come, well, I wasn't afraid. I was out there doing it. But anyway, the parent should have the right to put the place that child's going to learn the best and bloom. Where is that child going to succeed? Homeschool, private school, charter school, public school? I don't care. Parents know their children. Parents know where that child should go. The money should follow the child. That's just the way it is. The federal government pays out, the money follows the child. The state government pays the independent school district, the money follows the child. We've got that figured out. That's not a problem. Many, many other states have done this. Why is it such a problem in Texas? Because we have a very large teachers union that doesn't like it. And that's the biggest union we've got, and that's the problem. Let's focus on the child. Let's focus on the family. Let's let the parents put the onus on the parents to make those decisions. And you'd be surprised how many of these other issues are going to go away. This should not be a huge battle. Other states have done it. Texas should be leading instead of following. We should have done this years ago. I do not understand why it's a big issue. Let's just put the children first, and we should be fine.
That all sounds great, but it's a big issue because of the money. And that's where we trip over ourselves every time. Everybody wants their hands on the money.
So I think one of the biggest things that is going to be solved this session, the bill is not going to be so big and include so many other things. And I think what they were trying to do to get it passed last session, and you guys that were there, you tell me if I'm wrong, but I think they had to try to satisfy the people that were kind of on the border of, am I school choice or not? And so they kept throwing more and more things into the bill to try to satisfy them. And so I think the bill now is going to solely focus on just the school choice issue because the votes are going to be there. And then the other things are going to be other bills that are not related to that. And I think that's going to make it such a giant money bomb, number one. Number two, I think it's important to know that school choice is going to be an option. So if you are homeschooling your child, just don't, if you don't want government strings, then don't opt into it. And so you will,
because there will be strings.
Right. Well, if there is,
Abbott has said there will be strings.
And there's going to be, well, they have to, if you're going to get government money, I assume that they have to regulate or make sure that you're testing out of something or whatever. But what I'm saying is, if you're one of those people that's like, I don't want government strings, I homeschool my kid, then don't get involved in it. That's my advice to you.
That's what I would do too.
And then, or if you put them in and you think that it's something and it ends up not being what you thought it was, then pull out and go back to what you were doing before. But the biggest thing is, it is an option and a choice. The government's not coming to your house saying you're doing school choice and you're going to jail if you don't. You know, it's not that, it is an option. So I would always keep that in mind for the people that are the never school choices. If you're fine with what you're doing, please continue to do that.
Yeah, Julie, I think everybody here will continue fighting to make sure there are no strings or as few as possible. Again, remember, it's totally optional, but Additionally, it's great for those people who can currently afford to send their kids to private school. But the ones who really, really need this the most, where you see the most need, are in some of those center city districts that are totally failing. And you have parents who are willing to go the extra mile to find a private school, to get their children to and from school, put out the effort, but they don't have the money to put their children into some sort of an education system that will give them a chance. Those are the ones who will really, really benefit from it, and they don't have a choice. So I would love to see it for those people. Great for those who can currently send their kids to private school. But the idea here is to enable people who wouldn't otherwise have no option other than to leave their kids in failing schools.
Any other comments?
I'll throw one in there, especially on the testing. That's a big deal for me. So I pulled my kids out of the public education system immediately because of the sexualization that was going on in the libraries. That's in Keller ISD. We've since flipped that entire school board, and they have incredible representation there. I believe there's hope for our public education system if we can provide options for families and if we can address the issues at the root cause of the indoctrination that's going on in our public education system right now. Additionally, when I look at the target student that I want to have access to school choice, it's typically not the middle or really, it's typically not the upper class child that already has the availability to go to private school. What I'm looking at is a child who is either in a single parent home or is in, two parents that are working full time that are taking on an additional job to put their kids in private school. And I sit there and I think, do I think that the education system is supposed to raise the child? No, I don't. I think that's the core function of the family. That's the way God created it. And so if I had the option of a low-income family having an ESA to put their child in a Christian school and not have to take a third job so that mom and dad could be home more with that child, that's always going to be a winning option for me. Of course, we're going to fight strings. And you have our commitment. I think on the bill that came to the floor, I think we had 18 amendments ready to throw down that day to start stripping strings out of this thing. We never made it to it because that bill was killed. But ultimately, I think we have to fight as hard as we can. But I think it truly, truly is, as Senator Ted Cruz says, this is a civil rights issue of our day, that we have families that truly have their child in failing school system, and it's going to affect the next generation of Americans. And so I think we're at a precipice of, okay, how do we fight against government regulation while also giving options to families? And I think that's going to be the tension.
And I think that you can get the commitment from, and I guess I'm speaking for all of you when we say, a school choice bill is not going to drop in front of us and we're like, rubber stamp, awesome, yay, we're done, let's go. No, we are going to scour that. We're going to speak to our constituents. We're going to speak to the people that have been on the front lines the whole time, and we're going to make sure that we're going to pull those strings out as much as possible. Are we guaranteeing there won't be any strings? No, we can't do that. We haven't seen the bill yet, but we are going to read it, and we are going to work together with all of the other 20 or so. We're going to work together to make sure that we can do what's best for our constituents. And so know that we're not just going to rubber stamp something that flies on our desk and feel like we're done with it. That's not. And a lot of people have come to me and said, you're just going to sign anything because Greg Abbott. First of all, Greg Abbott didn't get in my race. Just saying.
That would have been hilarious if he did.
I mean, he didn't. And so we don't, and even if someone did get in our race, we don't owe anyone anything. We're going in there for our constituents, period.
I think COVID brought to light problems in our public education, and people don't trust the public education system anymore because a lot of this came to light. And so now everyone is awake and aware, and we have to make changes. We've been pouring money for the last 30 years into public education, and our scores have been dropping and dropping and dropping, right? So 50 years? Okay. a long time. So, we have to do something. Something has to change. We can't keep doing the same thing and expecting better results.
One more quick thing to add, too, is just to make totally clear that just because someone supports school choice does not mean they don't support public education. I mean, we have a public education system. It has to get improved. It has to do a better job. I support it. I think we all totally support improving our public education system, getting them what they need, but also trying to figure out how to help them provide better services. We're hoping school choice will provide some competition, show some differences in ways that might be able to help our public education, but we are going to focus on that just as much.
Yeah, let me add one other thing. unrelated to school choice, I think that what's really cool about having all these conservatives that are going to come in this freshman class is we can have a real conversation of whether we want to take all this federal funding and tell them to stick it where the sun don't shine.
Now we're talking.
That Title IX stuff doesn't change. Yeah. They need to go home.
I can speak to that real quick because I actually did when the Biden administration put out its illegal and unconstitutional Title IX reg that I believe puts teachers, faculty, staff, and students in imminent danger. I put out a thing asking the speaker to put out an emergency interim charge to the committee, which I do serve on, the Public Education Committee, to treat this with the seriousness and the gravity with which it deserves. And I think that Texas should be, look, when you have an out-of-control, unconstitutional, tyrannical federal government, the state should be fighting back. And I don't think it should just be the states. I think the state of Texas should be leading the nation and coming up with bold, creative solutions. And so I think, just to pick up on that, I think that, quite frankly, as a member of the Public Education Committee, as much as I love sitting here with you today, I should be in Austin right now, meeting with my colleagues, exploring ways where the state of Texas can tell the federal government to keep their money and all the dangerous strings that come along with it. They only give us a small percentage of our budget. People think the federal government funds all these schools in Texas. It's only around 8 or so % of our budget. We are a wealthy, prosperous, big state. We can afford to do this. Texas students should be educated by Texas teachers, Texas communities, and Texas families. We do not need the federal government, and this is one of the things that I think I'm so excited to work with these colleagues here, future colleagues, about getting the federal government out of having anything to do with educating any student in the state of Texas.
Ban the TEA.
Preach it.
Abolish it.
So for years, I have heard Grassroots talk about get the federal government out of it. This is the first I've heard legislators do it. So that gives me hope.
I'm already having meetings on it.
And you're passionate about it, I can tell. So, okay, the two top issues that have been, I've only been involved in politics for 15 years, but the two top issues for the entire 15 years have been, what do you think? Property taxes and the border. So let's talk about those. And I had specific names down here on who I was going to ask, but you've all really had good airtime. So who feels comfortable addressing the border?
Let's get some freshmen.
So
Go ahead,
you have
Andy.
he's pontificating. So here's the thing about the border. A lot of folks don't understand that the border is as open as we can imagine it could possibly be. And the folks that are on the border on OLS need to have rules of engagement defined for them. We need to be able to treat the cartels as hostile right off the bat. And we need to be able to take any tool in our toolbox, anything we can imagine, anything we can think that to secure that Texas border, every mile of it, we need to do that. If that includes increasing the size of the Texas military forces from its currently about 26,000 all the way up to 100, we need to do that. We need to get folks on the border that are permanent operative force, not M-Day troops that have a job and a wife back home, or a spouse. And that's something that we need to change now, not, honestly, that could not possibly be soon enough. And so, I think that there was good legislation with HB 20. I mean, my personal opinion is I'd like to see that in the TMD, not as DPS, but I don't really care. Like, whatever we can do.
You're using abbreviations nobody's going to know.
So the Texas Military Department is Air National Guard, Army National Guard, State Guard. And, when we have real conversations about whether the federal government could literally federalize our Texas military forces and take it out of our control, I think we need to have real conversations about whether or not, new troops that we augment our force with should not just be state troops. It's a strange place that we're in the year 2024, but that's where we are. I think if we don't secure our border, we'll cease to exist. And honestly, I heard Brandon Gill say this during the campaign, and I was like, this is amazing. This guy is amazing, because he's actually saying, like, this is not an option.
New congressman out of Denton.
Yeah, Brandon Gill, CD 26, right. And he said, we have to send them all back. And that's, whether the feds do it, whether Texas does it, it's got to happen.
And I think that is step one. And step two is quit incentivizing all of these people to come to our state. Quit giving them our money. First of all, it's almost like we're throwing them a welcome party over here, because we're giving them the means to exist here in Texas. And once the word gets out that we stop all of that, all of the money that we're giving them, the housing, the education that we're all going to be paying for, which is another road down a crappy school system because of all of these people that don't speak English, because it's not just from Mexico, people. Imagine and I was a teacher for 13 years. Imagine having like 20 more languages in your class, and you're trying to teach the other kids who are not illegal immigrants. So we've got a big problem as far as incentivizing these people. Once we get rid of that, the word would get out saying, don't go to Texas. They don't give you anything. Go somewhere else. And I'm fine with that.
So we all kind of know, because we have been talking about it for 15 years, what these solutions are. Is there any hope? Like, can we make progress this session? Like, what are your thoughts? Who's going to lead that charge?
That's great. I mean, I'll speak to it. I think ultimately there's a lot of things that we can do as well. I mean, right now, Texas is ranked #1 in human trafficking in the entire nation. For the first time in the history of our nation, Texas is ranked #1, beating California, beating all these other states. And the reason is because of the open border. And I think, ultimately, yes, we can take charge and we can continue to push and we can continue to push money and we can get that border protection unit that Dade Phelan killed this last session. We can do all of those things. We need Trump elected, though. I mean, we've got in Texas to get behind Donald Trump and make sure, they're throwing everything at him right now. The whole kitchen sink, the felonies, whatever. It's the first time I'm going to be voting for a felon. It's going to be great. And we've got to get behind the one man that can shut that down on the federal level to partner with us on the state level and make sure that all are working together. Right now, I went down to the border with Mitch, had the opportunity while he was in his race, and we saw it firsthand. And one of the things that we saw that was so bizarre is that as DPS is trying to do their job, they're being undermined by the Biden administration and Border Patrol because although we passed 16 hours and negotiated on the floor for SB 4, which is the weaker bill, not HB 20, I negotiated for us to be able to take biometric data of terrorists that are coming across so that we could actually know with our law enforcement if there are sleeper cells inside the state of Texas. And as we were fighting, what I realized and what Brian really highlighted on the floor to me is like, hey, we're going to continue to fight this, but you got to understand, and it was you and it was Matt Schaefer, hey, you got to understand they're going to be undermined by the Biden administration's Border Patrol. The moment they get across, they're going to try and do their job, and Border Patrol is going to take action and pull them away from them and give them access in. And so part of it, yes, we're going to fight, but we need President Trump in office.
Real quick, is there hope? There absolutely is hope. I mean, the fact that all these men and women are here with us today is reason for hope. If we can get the reforms that we're calling for in the contract for Texas enacted, there's absolutely hope. The House Bill 20, which I was very proud to join author with Representative Matt Schaefer, that bill would have passed if it had been allowed to get on the floor. And so that's one of the things we have in here is before we bring on what they did last session was they killed 7 or 8 of the Republican Party of Texas policy priorities, banned us not only from passing, they didn't even let us debate them on the floor. They kept them off the floor. Dade Phelan, the calendars committee, they just sent all the priorities there and they died, and many other to date's handpicked chairman. If House Bill 20 had been able to get on the floor, it would have passed. And they're exactly right. We need to get President Trump in the White House for sure. I was very honored to have worked in his administration on immigration issues. I was the chief of staff of the Department of Health and Human Services that put Title 42 in place. And what a lot of people has gotten lost in the headlines here, a lot of people don't realize, is I had written a Texas Title 42 bill to let Texas do a state-level version of what I was able to help President Trump do in Washington, D.C., and immediately deport illegal aliens using state and U.S. constitutional authority to do it. We put all of that into House Bill 20. So House Bill 20 would have actually let Texas secure the border, but it was never allowed to get to the floor for a vote. If we can get the contract for Texas reforms enacted, that bill would get to the floor, that bill would pass.
That's a perfect answer. That's what I wanted to hear. So who wants to address property taxes? Can we get rid of them?
Yeah, I'll take it. I think so. Julie, I've been doing property tax litigation in Texas for the last 20 years, representing property owners, commercial, residential, et cetera. I think what you saw in the previous legislative session, there was, I think you may have heard of historic property tax relief and all that.
Yeah, I didn't see it. I
Did
heard
you get
about
any
it,
of
but
it?
I never saw
Yeah,
it.
so what I was finding when I was knocking doors is if you were on an over 65 exemption and you're a homeowner, that property tax relief was coming to you because your value is capped. Okay, if you're a commercial property owner or you're not on an over 65 and you're just on a homestead, the appraisal district is raising the value of your property and that relief is not hitting you at the same time. So, for example, just take my house, for example. My tax is reduced by 1.8%. I got more property tax relief 3 years ago when we didn't have historic property tax relief. So the bottom line is we're compressing the M&O rate, but values are continuing to climb, so it's not hitting the average property owner in Texas the way that it should. I've had some people at the door when I'm door knocking say, why aren't we more like California where you have your value locked at some point earlier in time?
Is that on the table?
No. The problem is that eventually you'll have the Californization of Texas taxes because the budget of the state will continue to grow, but their ability to make revenue will be locked. And so fundamentally, here's the problem, Julie. I think the people that listen to your podcast are experiencing this too. We're over collecting money from Texans. When you look at the budget surplus that we have, that means that we have over collected from you. So that money needs to be going back to the property owner, to the property taxpayer, whether you're an owner or a renter, that money should absolutely come back to you in the form of relief. So I think the best plan is for continued compression of the M&O rate over time till that relief actually hits the bottom line of the average taxpayer.
So people aren't going to understand what you mean by compressing the M&O rate. How do we do that? Like, what does it mean to the people?
So what happened in the last legislature is Texas, you've got this big pile of money. They had decided to spend that money to buy down the maintenance and operations rate that is charged by the school district. It's the biggest ticket item on your property tax bill. So to put this bluntly, Texas subsidized the M&O for the average school district that is paying for its own maintenance and operations, and typically pays for that through your property taxes. So increasing the amount of that subsidy, having the state of Texas pay that rate down, should eventually hit the homeowner or the commercial property owner in the bottom line eventually. So what I think we should do is continue compressing it over time until it's gone. The other collecting jurisdictions that you'll see on your property tax bill, cities, municipal utility district, emergency service districts, they're going to still need to be funded through property taxes unless the state is just going to pay for all of it. So from my perspective, we need to be weaning ourselves off of that system over time, and I think Andy's got some thoughts on this too.
Yeah,
I hope so. You just put him on the spot.
Yeah, no, to add what Mitch said, I mean, if you look at the Huff Finds Liberty Foundation, they put out a white paper. And it's funny, in the runoff, you didn't really see all of the swamp really talking too much about historic property tax relief because the game was up. Like, people got their appraisal, or their assessments. And the thing about it is that, if you look at how much money was collected after all of the property tax relief, it's basically the revenue of property tax statewide across all the jurisdictions went up by $165 million. So how can you have historic property tax relief if revenue goes up? And so what you really saw was a transfer of wealth from state revenue into local jurisdictions because they didn't lower the rates. Like, it was all scam. And that's what we're seeing. So until you get to the point where you're willing to actually cap the growth of government, both the state level, at the local level, and not basically cheat by creating new funds with constitutional amendments and all this business to basically allow them to cheat, then we're going to see the growth of government that we have. But the thing that's cool about the fact that, again, that we have so many conservatives, they're not going to be able to gaslight you anymore, at least for a session or two, Because the thing is like, the only thing, I mean, literally all of the reps in one particular county in which I ran, got together and basically just, they even had we're passing a football. Like, we just scored a touchdown, historic property tax relief, $18 billion. And it wasn't. The thing that I think is really possible and tenable is the fact that if we commit ourselves to saying, hey, you know what, we can be the only state in the country that does not have anything but a sales tax. We make constitutional changes over the next 10 years to allow local jurisdictions to raise revenue via sales tax bonds. I think that this is something that we could be the only state in the country where people aren't renting their property from the government. It's immoral. It's extremely inefficient. I mean, this is the most inefficient form of revenue ever devised by mankind, is the property tax system.
Imagine if Texas actually led the way like we brag we do. That would be beautiful.
Well, and the
I
thing
love
is,
that.
if we don't do it, it's an epidemic that no one's talking about. And I don't know if only people who are knocking doors know how many people are moving to Oklahoma. It's a real thing. And these are conservatives we want to keep here. Yeah. So is this the Texas miracle where we're forcing conservatives that are financially responsible of moving to Oklahoma? Right. I don't think so. I think we need them here.
That's an excellent point. So those were the three big priorities I wanted to talk about: school choice, property tax, and the border. But anybody want to, you have a pet project you want to just bring up?
I'll just say one sentence because Nate mentioned it earlier. It's one of the basics that never gets talked about enough, which is tax policy is actually not anywhere near as important as spending policy. Because all taxes, once the government spends money, it's already taken it from the people. It's just a question of how we get it, how we steal it from you. And in the state of Texas, again, we're coasting on our reputation for small government. I'm not that old. Nobody up here is all that old. But like we remember when Republicans used to be the party of small government, of limited government, of reducing government spending. And I'm ashamed to say that in the state of Texas, just last year, just in one budget cycle, we exploded the size of state government over 25%. So instead of putting us on a path to eliminate property taxes, we put the state of Texas on a path to literally double government in less than 8 years. So if we do not get spending under control, and it's not just in Austin, but the local, the cities and the counties and the school districts, if we do not get spending under control, all of the next generation is going to be taxed into bankruptcy. So we've got to focus on doing the basics of protecting liberty, because as government grows, liberty is constrained and it's diminished. And how do you know if government's growing? Are we spending more money than we did the last year? And then I'll tell you what, if next session, we've got to make spending, lower spending, reducing government, limited government a priority again.
Well, speaking of limiting government, I mean, the issue of taxpayer-funded lobbying is insane that we haven't done that yet, that we haven't banned it. Right now, for people that are watching, if you don't know, I mean, your local municipalities are literally spending your tax dollars to rally against you at the city of Austin and with us. I mean, they're coming down and advocating for things. Cities that are within our districts are coming and telling us that you guys want things that we know you don't want because you voted for us, and using your money to do it. And so banning taxpayer-funded lobbying is so basic. It's something that I can't believe we didn't do last session. It's something that our calendars committee wouldn't even get a hearing to this last session to get on the floor. We weren't even able to debate these things on the floor.
Now,
absolutely,
Nate, tell the listeners why we haven't banned taxpayer-funded lobbying.
Well, there's a lot of, if I miss one, just tell me. But ultimately, right now, we know that we have state reps who personally profit from taxpayer-funded lobbying. We know that we have actual people in the legislature that are making money off of this. And we also know that taxpayer-funded lobbying is something that is just a cash cow. I mean, it's just unbelievable what we're seeing. And so I would say two of the things that we have to get done is ending taxpayer-funded lobbying. But number two, why on earth right now, when our next generation, my kids, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, aren't able to own property, why are we allowing our foreign enemies to own Texas land, whether it be farmland or commercial or residential? I don't care what type of land. Nobody that is not a citizen of the United States of America should be able to own Texas land. It's outrageous. Shelley?
I was just going to say, as someone that's run 3 different campaigns, my push card from running in the Senate campaign is almost the same as the one that I ran with. So yes, we've been talking about it a lot, and we only had 4 guys in the House that were fighting for those values, and it was hard for them. It was hard. But what I'm saying is, like, wouldn't it be cool? This is just an idea concept. If we just took the Republican priorities, there's 8, right? And we go, and do them, right? You give me a list. I'm like, oh yeah, let's do those. And then next time when we have to run again, we say, man, we don't even know what to put on our cards. Wouldn't that just be amazing? But right now, it's not, because it's such a freaking fight for these guys. But now they have the reinforcement. So I'm like so excited to stand right with these guys and say, okay, these are the priorities. I don't care what the Democrats want. We don't need the 600 bills that they pass before they even get to a priority. I bet some of these incumbents that got relieved of their job probably couldn't even tell you what were the priorities last session at all. They've never even looked at it. And so for us to go in with, I mean, as a teacher, you give me a list of things and I'm like, check. And I'm like, what's so hard about it? Everybody wants this. Let's just do it. And so I'm so excited to go in there and help these guys just go in and do it. And then be a little bit bewildered, like, what do we even do now after we do this? Yeah, that'd be awesome.
You're not as excited as we are to have.
It's accurate. Okay, I have to say taxpayer-funded lobby is my pet project for as long as I've been doing this, and Senator Middleton has promised me that he will file that bill every session until it gets passed. So we're depending on all of you to make it happen. I want to talk a little bit about grassroots involvement. Here at True Texas Project, one of our main things and most important things we do is getting people to engage in government. Sometimes it's hard to do that. We want them to engage in elections at the legislature, at the local level, everywhere that we possibly can. So I wanted to start with you, Carissa, with your landslide victory against Mr. What's his
Frazier.
name? I won't say his name.
Sorry. Okay.
Mr. Loser.
Nice.
How much do you think grassroots involvement had to do with
It
that
was huge.
big
It was
landslide?
huge. It was such a difference. He outspent me 8-1. It was just amazing. He raised 1.8 million to my 94,000. So the grassroots campaign, the people, I had people that loved me and got out there and knocked on the doors, made the phone calls, and made it happen. And it makes all the difference. If people just realize, they think their vote doesn't count. If they just realized that they could do a little bit. A lot of my supporters were senior citizens. They were retired. Maybe they couldn't physically knock on doors, but they could make phone calls. So we had an army, and my consultants told me, your secret sauce was your life group at church. I have 300 people in my life group, okay? So I don't go to a small church. I go to a big church. It's a small church, but I go to a big church. But I had people who were fed up with what they saw, and they were ready to do something about it. But grassroots make a difference. It's huge. So we were able to beat him. Like I said, he outspent us 8-1. And it was just amazing. We won 68-32. So that's a pretty big grassroots initiative.
Very exciting.
Thanks, Alan. I think I won by the fewest number of votes here. So fewer than 300 votes separated me and my opponent. And at the outset of my race, I wanted to have 4 endorsements, and I didn't get any of them. I had an endorsement from Ken Paxton. I had an endorsement from the True Texas Project. I had some other grassroots endorsements, but the reason this is so important that I want your listeners to understand how significant their activism is when I was standing the polls for 2 weeks in a parking lot at a library, people were coming to the polls with True Texas Project's card and saying, this is who am I? I'd say, hey, do you want a voter guide? And they'll say, I brought this one. I said, you're good. Okay? And the people who stood the polls for me, who volunteered, who block walked, they're precinct chairs. They don't have a bunch of money. They don't have some big fancy job. No one would care if these people endorsed me, but each of them was worth 100-fold. It was truly the reason I won the race was the support of the grassroots, because I can't thank some big endorsement. I can't thank some big lobbying group or PAC. It was the people on the ground doing the work. And I mean, I must have talked at the polls to 3,000 people. And when you win by fewer than 300 votes, it's the people who were physically there on the scene doing the work that did it all. And I know, Andy, you've got it like a mega grassroots victory. I want to hand this to him, but the other thing I want to say is, to Carissa's point, you haven't lived until you've had $2 million spent against you on broadcast. telling all of your best friends things about you that I didn't even know. And but the problem is the force multiplier that is the grassroots, the people doing the work in the community. That was my victory story. I know it's Andy's victory story too.
Okay, I'm really glad to hear those accolades. So the next thing I want to talk about.
Andy was going to say
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. I was just going to second what he said. I think me and Mitch and Shelley are in kind of an interesting group of candidates, and in terms of who supported us and how we got there. And I think that, it is fascinating to see what happens when people realize who they're represented by and are willing to actually stand up and make a difference to pull it off, to get a new representative in, despite the will of all the political establishment that doesn't want that to happen. And once they know, and I actually believe that we're not just at a point where we have 20-some odd conservatives in the Texas House, but we're actually at a point where a generation of people in certain areas of the state will remember what they learned in this race. And I think that we've set up a condition where people have learned enough about liberty, learned enough about what's gone wrong with our government and what we need to do to fix it, that they won't soon forget it. And I think that that's a credit to grassroots. And so I think it's a fascinating time to be alive.
Okay. Well, what I was going to say is, at the state legislature, we often find that the entire system is set up to dissuade citizen engagement. They make it very, very difficult for citizens to be involved. We have to travel from wherever we live to Austin to do anything. Testifying at committee hearings it is a major problem for citizens who drive 4, 5, 6 hours to get there and then sit through 8, 10, 12 hours worth of invited testimony before they ever get to the public. And sometimes we just can't stay. More often than not, when I have gone, I've had to get to a meeting, had to get home before dark, something. So I would sit there all day and never get my chance to get 2 minutes in front of that committee. So my question, and I think I want to address it to Brian first, is can you suggest ways that citizens can fight back against that? I know that committees are controlled by the chairperson, and they're the ones that, and I've sent some scathing letters to some committee chair people about this, but nothing ever changes. It just happened to me again on Wednesday at a Senate hearing. They had 3 interim charged, 3 different subjects. They took invited testimony on all 3 subjects before they ever let a citizen testify.
So a couple thoughts on this. Number one, not to sound like a broken record, but maybe to sound like a broken record. That's okay. The contract with Texas would actually help this because one of the points on there is to open up, Carissa mentioned this, AV recordings of all House proceedings. Well, what a lot of people don't realize, I know y'all are probably aware of this because you're very involved though, is that most Texans are shocked when they learn that there are actually committee hearings that happen with no notice and with no cameras rolling and in secret, because what will happen very commonly is somebody will walk up to the front mic when nobody's paying any attention, make some motion that nobody hears, and makes a motion to suspend the rules and allow committee on X to go take up Bill Y. This happens all the time, but what people don't realize is that they're just having a committee meeting in the back hallway or over in the corner of the room where bills are debated, passed, killed, and literally there's no cameras, there's no microphones, and citizens had no chance to even show up to those meetings. So the bare minimum that we could do to address this would be to say, if you're going to have a committee hearing, the cameras and the microphones have got to be there so they can at least watch what's happening. So that's one way the contract with Texas could effectuate some change on that. The other, you mentioned this invited testimony thing. What she means is all of the lobbyists, okay, are basically given a front row seat. You go to the front of the line, and then not only do they get their 2 questions, okay, but they've got it worked out with the committee, and the second they start asking questions of that lobbyist, now their 2 minutes is unlimited minutes.
They get a lot more than 2 minutes to
That's
start
right.
with, but yes, you're right.
And you're at the front of the line. So we've got to allow committees to be chaired by actual conservatives, not Democrats, because trust me, the Democrats do not care about what the people who are watching the True Texas Policy podcast are listening to. We've got to make sure that they are committee chairmen willing to go as long as it takes to get Texas voters who are going to be impacted by these proposed laws a chance to speak, and get members, not just conservatives as chairman, which the contract would hit too, but also all these conservatives that we're going to have on the committees. Make sure that when grassroots Texans sacrifice, take time off from work, time away from their family to go testify, that we ask them questions, and that we make sure that if they've taken time to drive across the state to get to Austin to testify for their 2 minutes, well, maybe they say a couple things that we need to give them some more opportunity to expand on so that our liberal colleagues can listen to them. And so that's something that all of these men and women are going to get to help us do next session.
Okay. And Alan, can you suggest something that citizens advocates can do to have a bigger impact on the legislative priorities that we try to get passed? Every session, we give them 8. They give us back maybe 1.5. What's the best thing that we as citizens can do to drive that?
I'm just say contacting your representative and your senator, let them know you're watching, asking questions, and if they don't get back to you, just keep bugging them, keep contacting them, keep pushing them. Get your friends to contact them. Come to Austin. You may not get to talk, but at least you can pack the rooms. You just have to let your representatives and senators know that there's a big group of people interested and watching, and part of a network. You know, it's easy to ignore a single person, but when you start understanding that one person can influence another 100, and every one of those 100 can influence 10 more each, there's really not any other way I can think of to do it.
Question I get asked all the time is, what's the most effective way to contact a representative? Is it a phone call? Is it an email? Yes. Is it a handwritten letter? Yes. No, they want to know which works best.
All of
but they don't. We make phone calls and somebody writes down our message and then it gets, filed in a file drawer somewhere. I mean, personally, we've found the most effective thing is handwritten letters and postcards. We use postcards with our logo on it, and our citizen advocates gather there at the Capitol, and we start writing postcards and delivering them to committee members and legislators all over the Capitol.
Well. So I know, there are certain days. It was so funny when, I'll use this one as an example. Again, SB 14 comes to the floor. My office, the phone shut down because we had 700 calls and voicemails in over the course of an hour. And I was like, oh my goodness, how are we going to respond to all these people? And I told, one of my staffers was like, do we turn the phone back on? Or I was like, yeah. Answer as many as you can. Answer as many people as you can and respond back to them. The other thing is, if it's on a day where there's a huge priority bill up and you can't get through to the office, shoot us a DM on social media. You can guarantee we're on there. So here's the one thing. A lot of state reps don't manage their own email. A lot of state reps don't manage their own phones in their office. Most of them manage their own Twitter account. So if they're on the House floor, that's the quickest way for me. Shoot me a text or see an X post. But here's what I would say, and I want
a pen to write that down.
Yeah,
that's my representative.
Yeah, Fran is my constituent, and so you better believe I'm hearing from Fran. But yeah, but here's what I would say too. I'll never forget. You guys ran a rally to ban Democrat committee chairs, and I think it was. Yes, I think there's 1,000 people. I mean, it's nuts on the first day. Me and Brian were out there, and many of you guys were out there.
After Republicans tried to
Well, no, that's my point.
Out.
And so this is that's what I'm getting at, is on the House floor, before we came out to that rally, I think I had gotten a text from you. I may have gotten a text from you that day as well to come out there and represent the people to ban Democrat chairs. I am not joking. Me and Brian were berated from the time those texts started coming in from other state representatives. Let me be clear, not the Democrats that we were trying to ban from being chairman, but other Republicans that were scared that their precious Dade Phelan was going to be embarrassed by the rally. And they said, Nate, if you go out there, this is career ending. Nate, I'm not kidding. Career ending.
They're singing a different
career ending. But here's my point in saying all this.
Against Democrats.
Right.
I was never against banning Democrat chairs.
So the reason I say that is, if your representative won't meet with you, if you drove down to the Capitol to see them, vote them out of office. That's insane. That's insane. 1,000 people would show up, and we have representatives that wouldn't go greet the people that are there on their dime to do their business on what they elected them to do. And so I would just echo with the grassroots, do whatever you can to connect with them, but go talk to them in person. Let them know who your face is. If you haven't met your representative, go meet them and demand a meeting. You have every right to do so.
Yeah, and I'm encouraging people to do that now during the interim. I know you get so busy once legislative session starts, but thank you. We're going to pass it to Julie now.
That's actually a perfect segue, because this conversation, I mean, we love doing this. We like hanging out with you guys and hearing the inside scoop and your thoughts, and we want our people, our viewers, the constituents, I mean, the true Texans across the state, we want them to have these same experiences. So I want to tell you guys that are watching that our birthday party in July, we're having a meet and greet. Hopefully you guys are going to show up there. Our goal is to get the 21 there so that you can mingle with them. You can start building relationships. You can hold them accountable as needed. But I think that's an important part of not just the process of legislative stuff and it's all work, but it's fun. It's encouraging. It's good for the soul to know that we're not alone, right? So get to the conference. It'll be the last thing we do on Saturday, July 13th. Hopefully you guys will come. We'll make sure those invites go out. And then also, Fran, if you just want to touch on when you go to Austin, do you not see those relationships build?
Yeah, we definitely do, but it takes so much consistency. I'll share something that happened in October. Myself and 4 or 5 others, we went one day. It was during one of the specials, not much going on, hardly anybody was actually there. There were no committee hearings that day. We just went around to offices wherever there was someone in the office and talked to whoever, was at the desk. And one after another, even people that don't particularly like us or we don't particularly like them, they were saying, we're really impressed with We see True Texas Project people here all the time. You guys are the boots on the ground, and we respect that. So even if they don't agree with us and don't want to do what we ask them, they respect the fact that we show up and we are never going away.
I think that's a great way to wrap it up. If you want to have a voice, if you want to have influence, you have to get involved. So we'll wrap this up. Thank you guys all for being here. We normally end with a toast, but I don't think Fran has a cup. Do you? It's way down there. That's okay. So here's to True Texas.
And here's to True Texans.
Thanks, everyone.